The rhythm of healing, the octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make, in strength and in stillness our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. I am KJ Alexander here with my co-host, Tonya Octave, and today we have a lot of important information to dive into. But before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and let Tonya tell a little bit more about herself and what this podcast is about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Octave, and we are going into Season 5 of Trauma and Social Work Podcasts, where we will be discussing and diving deep into my book called Heal the Mind, 7 Strategies Towards Mental Wellness, Happiness, and Success, Exploring Trauma, Mental Wellness, and Ways to Live a More Balanced Life. And before we begin, just a simple reminder that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended for medical, psychological, mental health, or legal advice. Although I'm a licensed professional, this is not a formal type of treatment. We may talk about things like hypnosis and meditation and things that we would do in a therapeutic, from a therapeutic perspective, but it's not a form of treatment. For individual questions about your wellness, your happiness, and your success, please seek out a professional. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, do call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.
Great. Awesome. That was amazing. So with that being said, I want to make sure I tell the audience, if you haven't already, follow this page on Spotify, YouTube, and any other platforms we post episodes on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming episodes in the future. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. I am your host, KJ Alexander, joined once again with my co-host, Tonya Octave. And today we're continuing our discussion into the book, Heal Thy Mind. And on this episode 20 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast, we'll continue our discussion from last episode on the subject of forgiveness. So, Tonya, would you like to share with the audience something from the book?
Yes, I'll continue kind of reading a part of the book on forgiveness.
Okay.
Um, it says, forgiveness is a conscious and deliberate decision to let go of resentments and control. Moving away from blaming and shaming, you move towards compassion and humility. Forgiveness is not about staying in an unhealthy relationship or trying to make a bad situation work. It is about setting limits and boundaries in a loving way, releasing the old baggage. You are moving forward in life without feeling defeated or ashamed, or moving towards mental wellness. And then I'll continue with the next paragraph too. Forgiveness is working towards controlling and destroying the ego, giving you opportunities for growth and self care in a more profound way. Forgiveness is about you and not about the other person. They did not win the fight, they did not get one over on you, but you simply allow the anger and hatred to leave. In my life and in the stories that people have shared with me, I have found that forgiveness is complicated because of the belief we have that someone has done something wrong to us. And then I go on to say, I think Mother Teresa says it well. It is not about the other. It is only about you and God.
Mm. Yeah,
And
and I
so
think that's. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
you go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say I think that's an excellent way to kind of end that section with that quote right there. It's only about you and God, and I think that is one of the key aspects of forgiveness. And once you understand that, I think that is one of the biggest steps a person could take into moving towards forgiveness. So I want to back up a little bit and talk about something you mentioned. You said forgiveness is working towards controlling and destroying the ego. And I wonder if you can kind of break down, is it possible for somebody to completely destroy their ego? Or is that something that they kind of just have to learn how to control and live with?
So the idea of the ego was mostly popularized by ego psychology by way of Freudian psychology. And really, there's other fields in terms of how they understand ego. And destroying the ego is a concept found in various kind of spiritual philosophical traditions. And it really refers to this transcendence, or dissolving the self-centered identity that creates ideas and concepts like separation, creates things and themes like attachment or suffering. The ego can be described as part of the mind that identifies with these kind of personal narratives, roles, um, kind of material concerns. And in from a spiritual perspective, it creates the illusion of individuality and control. And so when you talk about kind of destroying the ego, I go to more of a philosophical or spiritual foundation in understanding that. One of the ways of doing that is letting go of self importance, moving beyond excessive self focus, pride, and the need for validation. So, kind
Okay.
of, I don't need that in the world. I'm so filled internally with that I don't need any external validation. Um,
Mm.
there's also this idea of dissolving the illusion of separation, that I am different from you, recognizing that the self is not separate from others or the universe, but that we're all interconnected with everything, and that we all exist in the world um, because of this interconnection. There's not a separation. The process of going that one can go through, you would explore attachments and certain desires that you have, and you want to move towards a place where you are releasing these unhealthy attachment to things, material possessions, external validation. So your attachments change and move from wanting to have friendships with the external environment, wanting new clothes, wanting bigger houses and bigger cars, to more of an internal satisfaction. The desire, the drive becomes wanting to spend time getting to know you and how you're showing up, and not doing it for external validation. So I'm going to stop there because these are really kind of broad, and a lot of spiritual communities write
Okay.
about them in various ways. What are your thoughts about that in terms of like the attachments when we talk about destroying the ego, like giving up this idea of self-importance, that we're all interconnected and that our attachments are not external?
Yeah, so I think it definitely takes a mindset shift for a lot of people to start looking at their life like that. But
How can
I
this be
think,
helpful if someone wants to navigate a different path? This way of thinking, how can that be helpful?
yeah, so I think it would help somebody who feels kind of stuck in life or whatever situation they may be in. They feel like whatever they're trying may not work, whether it be in a relationship or at a job, or they just feel like they're not moving in the direction they want to, and something's holding them back, but they don't know really what it is. It very well may be your ego that's holding you back,
Mm.
because it's like you said before, the ego can tell you things that may or may not be true, and get you to do things out of a defense reaction, right? And which, how you react to your ego, how you react when your ego is in control may not be the best way to react for what you want as a person. So I think that is a case where controlling the ego would definitely help a person. And only a person would know whether or not they're going in the direction they want to go in life. I can't tell you, you can't tell them. So it really just comes down to doing self analysis and trying to figure out the root cause of their issue. Is it an external force or is it an internal force?
So part of it is the conversation about how the ego shows up and getting to know the ego, getting to know defenses because they are protective, and feeling a very fulfilled life in that way. When you control the ego, you feel balanced. Everything appears to be working well in terms of navigating relationships. Although you may have some hiccups along the way, things are kind of relatively smooth. There then is a push for some spirits to say, I'm glad that I've arrived here, but is there something else? And that push is, do I still need the ego? And can I operate in physical form without the expression of ego? So then, can I give up things that I hold on tight to? And those may be attachments. And so, what are some of our closest attachments? Those may be family relationships. So, you may question whether or not, although I love my earthly parents or my earthly children, do I need those attachments for my own survival? Or can I exist without those attachments? And when they show up, they can still bring kindness and happiness and pleasure to my life. But my whole existence is not based on that. For example, if a child is making choices and decisions that are incongruent with what a parent wants. So let's say that you have a parent and maybe they're both attorneys and they have kids and their kids don't want to be attorneys and they kind of just want to hang out and kind of party and have fun. Parents may feel some way, but if you're working to destroy the ego, you're going to know and experience that that was one aspect of you. That's the interconnectedness with everyone. That other personalities are intertwined in how you are, meaning that I cannot just see myself in you, but I can see myself in Susan. I can see myself in Eric. I can see myself in the person who's on the street that I don't know who it is, because I am a manifestation of the same creation, and it's all beautiful no matter what that physical form looks like. So when people see me, they may see I wear a certain attire, they may see that I drive a certain car. That is a manifestation, but that I am no separate, I am no different than the individual who might be living on the street, who may not have a lot of material possessions and things. And instead of judging that person, appreciating that person and having love for that person, because that personality, that person, i.e., that personality is also a reflection or an illumination of you. And having that type of concept, how you operate in the world. Because when you operate in the world, seeing that we are all interconnected, it kind of tells the ego there's no need for you to show up. There's no need for a trigger to arrive. There's no need for me to feel some way other than love. Because I love myself, which means I love you and the entire world, because we are all interrelated and we are all in existence for a person and all for a purpose and come from the same source. So when we talk about destroying the ego, there's a lot written about it. And then there's experiences that people have. And then there's conversations that you can have with people who have said and written about and told stories that they destroyed the ego. I remember reading this book in India, and this book was written by a psychologist in terms of mystic psychology.
Okay.
And it talked about how when you meet people and you think that they have achieved enlightenment and they're living this life in this beautiful way, and you see them and you're like, that becomes your high vibrational energy person that you want to kind of be around, you want to absorb that energy. The book says even them, they have more work to do.
Okay.
So
Oh, wow.
I always say not necessarily be cautious, but be curious about how, as you get to know your ego and your defenses and all of these things that show up, is that going to be good enough for you? Or do you want to go down more paths of self-discovery? And a part of that path could be figuring out what it means for you to destroy the ego.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I heard kind of stood out to me was that people benefit from feeling connected to other people. And it's interesting that in the age that we live in with technology and social media, we have more capabilities to be connected than ever before. Yes, people still suffer from feeling disconnected and some of these issues that we mentioned before. So I think that would be interesting to kind of know. And I wanted to read this last section of this section of the book. So forgiveness and showing kindness go hand in hand, and along with identifying triggers, they are helpful in developing mental wellness. Kindness allows you to focus on yourself and focus on others. Showing kindness boosts your mental state and your endorphins and brings calmness and encouragement. As you identify areas where you react, commonly known as triggers, you become more aware and change how you act. So, I wonder if you can kind of break down for those who may not know what exactly are endorphins, and how does showing kindness boost your endorphins, and why is that important?
Okay, so let's maybe talk about kindness and the
Okay.
definition associated with that. Kindness is, can be transformative energy in someone's life, because what you realize is when you display kindness that you receive something maybe unexpected, and that sometimes is kindness in return, which is beautiful. And that it really is a way of integrating this mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And they even say like these little small acts of kindness does this little ripple effect, and it will influence entire communities. And you don't even have to necessarily be in the community or know the person. And so I'm always, cautious aware, sensitive in terms of how can I be kind to other people, because a lot of times we don't display kindness in our interactions with others. Some people have associated kindness with being weak. They fear that they may be taken advantage of. I would say that kindness does involve a certain level of emotional intelligence, a certain level of self awareness, and the capacity to be resilient. So the idea might be that true kindness involves setting boundaries while showing compassion in how we operate in the world. And yes, you're right. Kindness can trigger and release these things like dopamine and oxytocin, and that is those two hormones are known to be the happy hormones. They say, like when they're pregnant and then they have these babies, they have all this beautiful oxytocin released, and that is really like the baby bonding period, and that helps develop a secure attachment. And then there's things that we can do on our own to release these hormones over and over again to help support the idea or the theme that to show up in kind ways. I find that being kind reduces stress and anxiety. It really kind of just relieves a lot of stuff for me because I'm just kind. To me, it's easier to be kind than it is to show up in different ways. And I have seen the impact of it trickling down to other people who I may not even have direct communication with.
Interesting. So, in your opinion, if you think that it's easier to show kindness than to be rude or unnice to a person, why do you think that so many people take the harder approach, which is to be reactive and to be triggered and to be unkind to people? Why do people take the harder road more times than not when it could be a lot easier just to be a nice, kind person?
Think about it, KJ. Think about what you know in history. And when was there a moment in history where we showed up in kind ways? That's a hard reflection.
So you
Think
mean
about
we
it.
as a society?
Yeah, people, even around the
Um,
world. If I say,
yeah,
think about a time in history where we had war, where we felt that this was our land, that we should invade other people's land, or maybe they weren't entitled to it to begin with, or we knew something better, we could bring weaponry, we can bring money, we can bring wealth.
mm,
So historically, I'm not going to go back to ancient times, but more and
okay,
more the modern history, it's not that we have generational patterns of showing up in kind ways. Even if we think about the people in our family and do our own self reflection, who shows up with kindness most of the time?
mm,
Like, do we know people in our friendships? They may do kind acts, but are they showing up with kindness in their whole being and how
yeah,
they operate, how they see the world, how they experience the world? And so if I go to behavior and I think about what it tells us about development, development tells us like things are transmitted from generation to generation. That's what epigenetics tells us too. It confirms it for us. And so we show up in the world because we're modeling what we see in the world. When a 5-year-old is at school and someone is bullying them, they learn to bully.
yeah,
Or they learn self protection because then they go home and they tell their mom and dad and they say, don't act like that. Make for sure you protect yourself, do this and that. Do the parents say that child may be struggling? Can you do a kind act for that child, even though he may be trying to hurt you? Ooh,
mm,
we don't do
yeah,
that as parents. I know I didn't show up that way as parents, right? And
yeah,
so we learn along the journey in that process. So we don't have a society where we are mimicking these really exceptionally beautiful foundation of ways to nurture, of ways to be kind, of ways to demonstrate compassion. We know how to be angry. We can yell, we can scream, we can throw, we can do temper tantrums as a child, as an adult. We learn how to develop impatient because we want everything now. We don't want to wait.
Yeah.
So we are really modeling or mimicking what has been exposed to us in our environment. And I say this to say, knowing this, then that's an opportunity for you to explore what are the other ways of showing up. Experiment. You got what it's like to show up this way in the world. And if you feel that that's working out, great. But if it's not, then don't get stuck in it. See what it's like to be kind to people, even though they may not be kind to you. But remember, there are still those firm boundaries. Know where those firm boundaries are for you in your own growth and where you are. And as someone starts to maybe brush against, get closer to those boundaries, maybe give them some verbal responses. I don't know if you remember this, and this wasn't the best parenting technique that I did, but I'll share. When you were a kid and I said, if anyone ever messes with you, you had 3 things that you had to do. Do you remember those 3 things? It was like, don't put me on the
Not,
spot.
yeah, not entirely.
But you had to tell the person, you had to give them a verbal, I don't like you poking me with sticks. If you continue to poke me with sticks, it's possible I could hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a verbal response. The other thing is look around, because as a child, there should be adults supervising you. Look around and see if there are adults around. See how good the adult supervision is. If there are no
Okay.
adults around, then 3, do what is necessary to keep yourself safe. That means this golden bubble that you are protected with by spirit, if that is being invaded, then you keep that bubble safe because that bubble is your spirit. I don't know. I probably would revise that a little bit more if I had some little ones around.
Yeah.
But those were kind of the techniques. What do we
Yeah.
hear other parents say when kids are bothering them? I don't know. Have you heard other parents say things and give messages to kids?
I mean, me personally, not too much. I typically don't really pay attention now to how other people parent their kids, but
Mhm.
I have noticed just based on my own personal experience, and it just seems like a lot of these behaviors are passed down, and a lot of people are just unkind, or they don't have the right direction based just on default, just almost like based on just not having anything else to be exposed to. So I think a part of it is kind of just someone has to be willing to unlearn what they've learned throughout their formative years and
Mm.
try to implement some new ideas and new concepts and way of thinking, which would be hard for a lot of people, but that is that is really the only path I see to moving more towards being a kinder person. Especially when it comes to raising children, you definitely want to give your children a kind way to go about things, and not necessarily be so angry and so upset with people when they do things that trigger them. So I think that's important for parents to try to instill that in their children at an early age, to be more kind to people.
And you talked about this unlearning process. And that's what that's the things that I read in terms of feeling spiritually fulfilled. It is an unlearning process, unlearning what we've learned and been taught as truth, and learning to discern the difference between what is real and what is unreal, what is a truth versus what is an untruth. That is a part of the journey. I think it's a part of the beautiful journey. And there are some things that go along emotionally as you start to discover some of these things you thought were truth and end up being untrue. There's a lot of emotions that can go on because it becomes a grieving process. And so you navigate going through the grieving process as you're moving towards a healing state. So, yes, it's about unlearning. And then, like, how do you learn how to be kind in a society that may not show up as kind? Be kind anyways, because this is about you and the connection with God, spirit, the divine, whatever you call that, if you have one. And if you don't have any belief outside of yourself, maybe explore what that even means to not have a belief of something outside of yourself, to give yourself to freedom to even experience what that and explore what that could even mean for you. Kindness is a way to help the body heal. When you display a kind act, you are healing the liver. And now I'm going to bring in some stuff that I know about Chinese medicine, because they've sorted out all of the emotions connected to a particular organ. Think about it. When people put things that damage the liver, like alcohol, into their body, I just read an article that under this new administration that they're going to force alcohol industry to add the label "cause cancer." And I was like, oh, that's not even on there already, but okay, I'm glad that we're at least moving in that direction. So yes, alcohol does cause cancer, even though there's other articles that are probably not that scientific that may debate that. But then how can you then heal the liver? Because we probably all got a lot of healing of the liver to go, and you can display some acts of kindness. It helps to repair the liver. It gives the liver this juiciness that it needs to be plump and juicy, because it's been dried out by all the things that have been toxic. Not just the toxic things we put in our body like alcohol, but the toxic thoughts. Like, if you hit me, I should hit you back. I don't know. I don't know if you hit me, my first reaction will be to hit you back. My first reaction probably will be to make for sure that I'm safe, because it is about my safety, not about your anger. And remember the third thing that I told you, you've settled the other two. The third thing is do what is necessary to keep your bubble safe. To keep that, whether if you want to call it a brick wall, if you want to call it a bubble, if you want to call it an aura, if you want to call it light, with all the ways that people describe it. What is needing to happen to keep yourself safe? And in that situation, I'm going to show up in kind ways. So a kind way may be, depending on the situation, run. A kind way may be freeze. A kind way may be fawn. Running, because I'm already going to go into a parasympathetic system if somebody hits me. I couldn't think of the last time somebody ever hit me in life. So I'm going to definitely go into that system. And then how can I then display kindness towards myself? That will be the priority, not taking care of the other person's anger. What do I need to do to keep safe? Because that's what a boundary is for. A boundary is something that we've set because there's things that we need to have in terms of protections from the outside world, because that we don't live in a world of kindness. We live in a world of anger. We live in a world of irritation. We live in a world that is driven by money. And there is a saying that all money is not good money. And some people say money is the root of evil.
Yeah,
Those
for
things
sure.
come from somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was very insightful way to break that down for a lot of people. But yeah, it's just ultimately it all comes down to what a person is willing to do and try differently that they haven't already done in the past. And I think this was a lot of great information for somebody to dive into and digest. And I think one of the most important things I want to highlight from this episode was that what you feed your mind is just as important as what you put in your body. So I think that is a very, very much important highlight of today's
And let's not
episode.
forget the spirit. It's just as
Yeah.
important of feeding the spirit. I want to talk a little bit before we end about just the endorphins and them being neurotransmitters, which are really kind of like our natural way our body has production of painkillers and booster. So we innately, in this beautiful machine that is given to us, this body, we have natural ways of like having endorphins, which help us to manage pain and help us to boost our mood. And we even have particular hormones that are released in the body to help relieve stress, to help enhance pleasure and creativity and things like that. And so when I think of endorphins, I think of things like, what can I do for pain relief? What can I do to enhance the mood? Maybe that is um, having a lot of happiness in life, smiling a lot, being just pleasant to being around, giving off good energy, being kind. What can I do to reduce stress? Monitoring my cortisol, making for sure that I'm more in sympathetic versus parasympathetic. Actually, that I'm more in parasympathetic versus sympathetic, because that's our fight or flight, and having a sense of calm and boosting motivation and energy and doing things that support this immune system. Our immune system is our protective capacity from the outside world. And so things that we can do naturally: exercise, laugh, have fun, be playful, and be childlike, not childish. Listen to music, high vibrational music, dance and create things with your own body. They do say sometimes like spicy foods. So there is some research that says spicy foods can enhance our pain receptors. But meditating, deep breathing, the physical sensation of touch, like hugging, cuddling, you know, giving yourself massages, that also helps to release endorphins. And then maybe doing like selfless services, not only just showing acts of kindness, but being kind in who you are, volunteering for things, not that it extends what you are, but that it brings joy and happiness every time you show up, you know, to give out that beautiful energy that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Well, it looks like we can go ahead and stop there for today's episode. Is there any information you want to leave the audience with before we close out?
Just at the end of the book, it gives some kind of practical things in terms of kindness, like making flashcards, doing affirmations, doing a screensaver on your any of the electronic devices you have, writing down small accomplishments a day, which I have started to do, and I have found some really beautiful things coming from that. Staying, you know, organized around particularly events and celebrations that you have, making, you know, small gifts or special notes for people. Now people kind of maybe just send text messages letting people know that you care about them, that you were showing up in kind ways. Having conversations with someone different from you. So learning to go past and beyond this fear factor and being open and receptive to hearing other people's opinions and ways that they're showing up in the world. There's some great things that are happening all around the world. So expanding that conversation. I talked about voluntarily, smiling. This is probably a little bit of my stuff. Showing up on time and being consistent and dependable. So that may be a little bit about what triggers Tonya sometimes, is when people are consistent or dependable. But I get why that is. But you
Yeah.
know, that is a display. When you are
Mhm.
on time, you are showing respect to that person. It doesn't matter where that other person is. If they're not or inconsistent, that you are communicating how you are and how you're showing up. I'm always going to say things about the stuff you put in your body. So like healthy snacks and providing nutrition, learning to forgive people, especially when it comes to things like money, or there was some sort of agreement and then maybe that agreement didn't fall through in the way that you want to. Instead of holding that on, learning to release that. Um, you know, and then there's a couple of other things: slowing down in traffic, things like that. And then, you know, like, share the stuff that you're learning from our podcast, share the stuff that you're learning from the other podcasts with people in your environment, to encourage the world to move towards a wellness plan, instead of going in a direction where we're hating each other. We want other people to die. There's selfishness, there's independence, all these other themes are showing up. So those will
Mm.
be my last thoughts to share. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this episode was definitely jam packed with a lot of great information. I want to thank our audience for tuning in on today's episode. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And with that being said, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Until next time, bye-bye.
Wraps up another episode. I hope today's discussion provided clarity and tools you can use in your daily life. If you're ready to take the next step in the healing journey, I'd love to connect. Head over to my website to schedule a free 15-minute consultation. It is a great opportunity to ask questions and see how we can work together. And while you're there, download my complimentary workbook designed to help you reflect, grow, and move towards mental wellness, happiness, and success. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time. The rhythm of healing, the octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.